Good morning, mushrooms. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brothers, sisters, mothers, misters, and to all my cousins out there around the world, it's time to plug in and get this train a-chugging. All right, as you know, there was an incredibly large and enormous, a mammoth explosion in Beirut yesterday. Look at the scale of the damage here. I mean, it really was pretty catastrophic. It was as the result of tons of potentially explosive cargo which were stranded in Beirut. Typically we were stranded with people. We saw that the new mother of quadruplets stranded in Dubai. We have people stranded on deserted islands. People were stranded in all sorts of different strange places as a result of lockdowns and the corona situation. But if you're stranded somewhere, you are unable to move. Apparently it was in a Russian ship that could not move because it was leaking. I don't know. And so, yes, the ammonium nitrate, which is commonly used as fertilizer and improvised explosives. So to have tons, literally tons of that sitting around is a very volatile situation. Ooh, sorry to make a joke and a little play on words with such a terrible, terrible thing. From sea to mountain, how an explosion devastated Beirut. To devastate is to do an incredible amount of damage. Cities are devastated by hurricanes. People or cities are devastated by fires, earthquakes, other natural disasters, and, well, man-made incidents and accidents as well. Also, though, we could use devastated to describe ourselves, and while not talking about actual physical damage, you could say, I was devastated by the loss of my puppy, or something like that. And it means if something devastates you, it means to cause immeasurable grief or sorrow, pain, and suffering. And so really, it's pretty much the same thing as the physical devastation, more on an emotional level. A crater, we see them all over the moon and other surfaces of other planets. And the crater is the round-shaped hole usually caused by an impact, or in this case, an explosion. Yeah, we see them on the tops of volcanoes as well. The round-shaped indent in the top of a volcano. Famously, there's Crater Lake in Oregon, which is a very beautiful thing, in which the crater of the volcano has filled with water and there's a little island sitting in the middle. But we also can use it as a verb, to crater. Now, already, the economy in Lebanon has been devastated by coronavirus and, well, just general mismanagement by the government. But yes, having their port and a significant portion of the capital city destroyed by this explosion will only further crater their economy. Not further crater their economy further. Yeah, and so to crater means a very sudden and dramatic drop or loss. Moving on, China and COVID. Here we go. China is ramping up its testing to 4.8 million tests per day. To ramp something up, and we can also ramp things down. And a ramp, just like people who are in a wheelchair use to, instead of the stairs, to go up, it's one of the 7 simple machines, the inclined plane. And so it implies increasing in a gradual and steady sort of fashion. Okay, let's move on. Hindu news. A giant Hindu deity, or the visual manifestation of one of the many gods within the Hindu pantheon. Remember, it's not a monotheistic religion, it's polytheistic. And they're putting a sculpture or a picture or something of a Hindu deity on Times Square. And why it's controversial, I don't know. Yeah, well, pretty much anytime you involve religion in something, it becomes controversial, causes controversy. But moving on. A scathing obituary condemns Trump and people who don't wear masks. Now, first off, we have to understand that obituary, that last week we had Obama performing a eulogy at the funeral services for John Lewis. And the eulogy is a speech which is given after somebody dies, passes away, in order to commemorate and memorialize their lives and accomplishments. An obituary is usually a piece of text which is published then in a newspaper, once again, to commemorate and memorialize the life and accomplishments of somebody. Now, some older person died of COVID-19, and so their obituary was published in a newspaper, and that obituary was quite scathing, and it condemned Trump. It criticized them in a very harsh and severe manner. And when we use condemn, it's usually on moral grounds. And scathing means very harmful, very severe, very damaging. And it comes actually from Old Norse. Skava, I believe, is the verb, and it means to harm or do damage. But interestingly, because of, well, Vikings, that Old Norse word entered not only English but also German and Dutch, and the equivalent then is Schaden, which made me think of Schadenfreude, which is the joy in seeing harm, pain, damage, and suffering in others. We've seen it time and time again in this pandemic. Almost 100 people have been infected with coronavirus after an ill man attended a church service. Yeah, probably not practicing appropriate social distancing, but either way, even still, with it airborne and aerosolized, even if you are distanced in a closed, controlled environment with people singing and so on, the virus is going to spread. And so a cluster has emerged around this ill man that infected 100 people at church. Do yourself a favor. Don't go to church. There are other options out there. Stay out of these situations. Protect yourself. All right, moving on. Speaking of John Lewis's eulogy, Trump trashes Obama's John Lewis eulogy. He's trashing it. He's criticizing it much as if it were garbage. It's like he's taking the piece of paper upon which it was written, crumpling it up, and then discarding it, throwing it away. He criticized him for talking about civil rights and trying to use being as so petty and trivial as to use somebody else's funeral as a way to progress a political agenda. However, at the same time, John Lewis was a famous and historical civil rights activist, and so therefore it is only appropriate to mention the thing which he dedicated his life to at his funeral. Musical artist is suing the Trump campaign for repeatedly having used his songs at their events, and he has provided cease and desist letters formally, legally requesting them to stop using his work for their promotional materials. However, they continue doing it, and so now he is suing them. He has initiated legal proceedings against them, and probably will be asking for some sort of compensation, some redress. All right, on to Turkish Women. This one's for you, my wife. Thankfully, you're not suffering any domestic violence. I do not beat my wife. But Turkish women are taking a stand against domestic violence. And so to take a stand against something means to face it, to confront it, because you want it to stop. You want to bring it to an end. And so to take a stand against something, you're not going to let them push you around anymore. You're not going to be intimidated by them. You're going to stand up to them and say, I'm not going to be a pushover. And so if you're taking a stand, you won't let anyone push you around. You are not being a pushover. You are confronting them and saying no. Well done, Turkish women. All right, let's move on. Some company, I'm assuming, used a racial slur for the internal name of a hat. I don't know. Employees are furious, very, very angry. To be furious about something. Why you would use a racial slur for the name of a hat and jeopardizing the reputation of your company, etc., I don't know. But to slur as a verb is kind of like the way people talk when they're drunk and they're not articulating their language, their words, and the words are kind of running and blending together, being then very difficult to understand. But in this case, a slur, especially a racial slur, we see those two together quite a bit, and it's a negative term intended to make a person or group of people look bad, to damage their reputation, so that way then other people look down on them, think less of them. No real language here. I just really, really wanted to point this out. Don't drink hand sanitizer. That's just a terrible idea. Idiots. Idiots. And some odd news. An Australian island has been or is looking at the picture here, in the picture it is blanketed in snow. It probably didn't last long, so you could say it was blanketed in snow. And it's just a nice metaphor, very visual. Yeah, just like a blanket will cover a bed, the snow can cover the island. It's not just a little dusting of snow here and there, but just a nice even layer that's covering it. It's blanketing the entire island. That's pretty cool. I'm assuming this island is down south near Tasmania or something along those lines. I don't know. Let's move on. Some good news here for them, I guess. Some Ethiopian artists are making a name for themselves on the international stage. As I always say, the world is a theater, and we are just performing our roles on a stage. It's just a common collocation on the world stage, on the international stage. But they're making a name for themselves. They are gaining recognition. People are acknowledging their work and their efforts. And so to make a name for yourself, or because it's plural, themselves, it means people are now starting to know who they are. It's just a nice phrase using the verb make. All right. Moving on. Kids shouldn't eat mac and cheese for breakfast. Give them some cereals and some fruit, something healthy. This is a bit more accurate. Jimmy Fallon mocks Trump's use of charts during the interview. To mock, we had it on yesterday and countless times in the past as well. And to mock somebody is to tease them, to make fun of them, often and especially through impersonation or imitation in a comical fashion. And who doesn't love mac and cheese? I'll eat it anytime, man. That's for sure. I'll eat it warm, I'll eat it cold, I'll eat it fresh, I'll eat it old. Anxiety, anxiety. COVID-19 is taking elevator anxiety to the next level. Because yes, some people were already anxious about using elevators because, well, you're in a closed, confined space. Maybe they're a bit claustrophobic, or maybe they are afraid of heights. But the nice play on words here as well, it's an elevator and it's taking the anxiety to the next level because that's what elevators do. They take you up and down. So good play on words here, writers. I'll give you a thumbs up for that one. It's a bit cheap, but I still like it. However, anxiety is the state, it's a condition in which you are in a way nervous and or worried. To be anxious, to have or suffer from anxiety. However, though, and we also have the adjective anxious. Maybe before an interview, you feel anxious. You're a bit nervous, a bit worried. To be anxious to do something, followed by the infinitive, anxious to do. In that case, then it more means you can't wait. It's like you're very eager to do something. Trying to dispel some of your misunderstandings and clarify some of the more nuanced aspects of the language. Or whatever. On to sporting news. Now, we mentioned it before because this guy apparently really bulked up. He added mass to his body, and the good kind, the muscle mass, to buck the trend. That's just a nice visual piece of vocabulary, not so common. I do believe it first came from finance and talking about securities and so on. If the whole market's going down, but one stock is going up for some reason, it is bucking the trend because there was a downward trend, but it's doing the opposite. And so that's what it means. But this idea, the verb to buck, what? The horse is bucking, trying to get the rider off their back, right? And so if you're bucking the trend, it's like you're throwing the trend off your back. And that's why I say it's very visual vocabulary, because it's evocative of that idea of a wild horse or a big bull kind of jumping around trying to throw off the pressures of the trends. Lucrative just means that it earns a lot of money. It's worth a lot of money. You get a lot of money really, really fast. Teaching is not the most lucrative profession. I should have become an anesthesiologist or a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist. Those professions are far more lucrative than teaching or being a librarian or a garbage man, whatever. Some strange examples off the top of the head there. And she wants India to discuss taboo topics. Now, taboo, if something is taboo, it means it's so offensive that it should not be spoken of or it should not be done. It's not necessarily against the law, but it's against social norms and it's unacceptable in a social fashion. So, as a result, then people don't talk about it. So something is taboo, typically used as an adjective. or a noun. It is a taboo. All right. Cool. And, oh yeah, here we go. Some more of my government people doing horrible things. The Trump ambassador pick. Now, pick, most people know that as the verb to pick, to choose, to select. Yes, and here it's not being used as a verb. It's the ambassador that Trump has picked. He chose some guy to be an ambassador who's not been approved yet, I believe. But this guy, the chosen ambassador, made disparaging remarks about immigrants and also called for martial law. Martial law is when the army takes over. But the point here, disparaging remarks. He disparaged them. And it's to treat somebody with disrespect and just you do not value them, and so therefore you're insulting them. Often used with disparaging remarks as an adjective as opposed to the verb here. A lot of negativity in the news and negative words, but I mean, I guess, can you blame the writers? That's just kind of the situation in the world in which we live. Those were the headlines for today. If you like what we do, please do click the like, subscribe, follow, add comments and things, and pass us along to a friend. Help us out with the algorithms, those magical things. All right, now I'm just babbling. And so instead of making this so long-winded, thanks everybody for tuning in. This is English Otherwise. This was breaking down the news. And if I don't see you sooner, see you at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Have a great day, a beautiful day. Bye-bye.